What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. I hope that everybody had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. I was having me a college football marathon. I was watching college football from Thursday, 5:30 in the afternoon to just wrapping up, getting done watching Bill Belichick's awful ending to his Labor Day weekend as North Carolina got embarrassed, humiliated, whatever word you want to use to describe this beatdown that TCU put on Bill Belichick in his head coaching debut. Just go ahead and drop it in the comment section because there was just an avalanche that rained down on Chapel Bill tonight. We'll dive into Bill Belichick's nightmare debut in college football. Miami took down the Irish 27-24. The Carson Beck haters, it's time for you to reveal yourself because we got to pull out these receipts because I saw the Carson Beck slander during this offseason. Oh, I'm glad that Georgia got rid of him. He sucks. He's going to completely unravel at Miami. Miami's not going to be anything without Cam Ward. Well, Carson Beck said otherwise, man. This dude was absolutely balling against what should be one of the better defenses in college football. We'll dive into South Carolina, Alabama especially. We got to talk about them. Of course, we got to dive into the discourse about Kalen DeBoer getting fired. But there's this lie I keep seeing pop up on my timeline about Nick Saban and how he made Alabama a dynasty. And it's rubbing me the wrong way. And we got to address it. If you don't want your favorite college football team to play like how North Carolina just did tonight, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss anytime we drop new content. Football season is in full swing. We are not just a college football channel, we're an NFL channel as well. We talk college football, NFL 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. If you live, eat, breathe, and sleep college football, this is the right place for you. If you don't want your starting quarterback to play like Anthony Richardson or to look like how Arch Manning did against Ohio State, a deer in headlights, check us out, JT Sports on Apple, Spotify. The links are down in the description below. Give us a 5-star review. If you want to support us, it's free to do. Only takes 30 seconds to complete the task. Go ahead and give us a 5-star review if you're rocking with the content and you enjoyed this episode. And I got one last thing that I want to ask you guys before we dive into it. I got into an argument with a few of my homeboys about which one is more devastating. You're at home and a Category 5 tornado hits your home, or a Category 5 hurricane hits your home. Which one would you be more concerned about? Me, I told them I'll be more concerned about a tornado because if a tornado comes to your house, you're not going to have anything left once it's over. But if a hurricane comes, yeah, you'll have flooding and, okay, maybe you have a few trees fall down on your house. But even if there is a Category 5 hurricane, I can't see it just completely destroying an entire neighborhood like how tornadoes can. But let me know your answer to this whole question, hurricanes versus tornadoes. Which one would you be more afraid of? And let's dive into it. This game was an absolute ass kicking. I'm sorry for the profanity, but that's the best way you can describe how this game went for Bill Belichick in his first ever game as a head coach in college football. North Carolina did not play against TCU like they were coached by a multiple-time Super Bowl winning head coach. They didn't look like they even practiced at all. Hell, they didn't even look like they knew how to play football. It's like North Carolina just forgot how to play football after their first two possessions of this game, which North Carolina, after tonight, would you be wrong to call them the best first two possession team in the history of football? I mean, on their first possession on offense, they drive right down the field with ease. Their ground game's looking strong. The passing game is looking really good. And you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, crap. North Carolina actually looks pretty legit on the Bill Belichick. They just might blow out TCU at home. The defense gets a stop on the second possession of the game, and then all hell broke loose for Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels, man. They couldn't do anything right. They couldn't tackle. They couldn't catch. They couldn't block. Their quarterback got split in half in the third quarter. He got two-piece comboed by TCU's defense. One guy hit him high, the other guy came low, and then a few plays later, the backup quarterback gets absolutely destroyed by one of TCU's defensive tackles. TCU had their backups in this game against Bill Belichick, the greatest head coach in the history of the NFL, a multiple-time Super Bowl winning head coach. Got outclassed, outcoached, and schooled by TCU. Their offense looked out of sorts. Their offense looked like a middle school offense. They barely threw any pass more than 3 yards downfield. It's like they didn't trust the receivers. They didn't trust the quarterback that they paid a lot of money to get in the transfer portal. And they were getting guys destroyed out there. With how bad North Carolina's coaching was, they could have got somebody seriously hurt out there. You already got your starting quarterback split in half. You almost got your backup quarterback killed on his second play. Every time somebody on North Carolina's offense touched the football tonight, they got obliterated. It's like North Carolina had a team that just forgot how to play football. North Carolina was worse than Bishop Sycamore. This is one of the worst teams that I have ever watched. And that's saying something because I watched 2024 FSU last season, and I never thought you could get any worse than what Florida State was as a Power 4 team. But Bill Belichick and Chapel Hill, they said, hold my beer, we got you. You have fans leaving the game. You have Michael Jordan in attendance, and you got embarrassed. And defensively, North Carolina looked as bad as what you ever could with somebody that has the defensive prowess of Bill Belichick. Every time North Carolina ran the football, it's like they were averaging 50 yards per carry out there. Nobody wanted to tackle. I am completely shocked and out of words to describe just how I'm choking up right now because, guys, even if you did not believe Bill Belichick was going to win this game or you felt he wasn't going to succeed at North Carolina, nobody expected for them to just get stomped like this. And if you say otherwise, I feel like you're lying. You'll have to DM me some proof. If you betted against North Carolina and you thought that TCU was going to blow this team out, please show me some proofs in the DMs because I was not expecting for North Carolina to look like this. And don't even get me started on the atrocious play calling North Carolina had on their final possession in the first half. What are you doing throwing the bomb on 3rd and 3? Nothing irritates me more as a fan of this game when I see a team in a 3rd and short, 4th and short situation, and instead of trying to get the first down, they throw a goal ball. What kind of play calling is that? Get the first down. Why are you trying to get a home run on 3rd and 3? Why are we even calling a bomb on 3rd and 3? We have so much of the playbook that we can use in this situation. We can run, power up the middle. We can run outside zone. We can run quarterback power. We can run read options. We can run RPOs. There's so many options that you have at your disposal as an offensive coordinator. And 3rd and short, you should not be taking bombs on 3rd and 3 when the objective is to get the first down. This did not look like a Bill Belichick coach team. This looked like Bishop Sycamore out there that we saw out of Bill Belichick tonight, man. And I feel bad for the fans. The fans of North Carolina football had so much hope, so much hype about this season. And to just have to leave the game after you probably spent about $30 on food and drinks, you have to pay for your ticket, which probably wasn't cheap since it's Bill Belichick. You know they're going to jack up the prices. What an embarrassment. Bill Belichick owes UNC fans an apology. He owes Michael Jordan an apology. he owes Randy Moss an apology for how much of an atrocity that North Carolina was tonight against TCU. You are the greatest head coach in the history of the NFL. I don't give a hoot if you're coaching in college football and you don't have no experience at this level. Being a good coach is being a good coach. Jim Harbaugh is a good coach in the NFL, and he was a national championship winning head coach at Michigan. Chip Kelly made it to the playoffs in the NFL, and he was damn good at Oregon. So, I mean, there are plenty of coaches that have been good, both in the NFL and in college football. North Carolina was embarrassing tonight. This is the worst team that I have ever seen. Their quarterback, before he got injured, their starter, had a stretch in this game when he went 2 hours without completing a single pass. And I'm not one of those people that like to say, oh, Tom Brady made Bill Belichick. If Bill Belichick didn't have Tom Brady, then he wouldn't have anything. You need to have elite coaching to win multiple championships in the playoffs. You can have an elite quarterback and underachieve if you're a poorly coached team. The furthest you can get with bad head coaching is the second round. That's it. Great coaching is what's required to be a Super Bowl champion. The Patriots always had that. Tom Brady played with several Hall of Famers on offense and defense. Guys that Bill Belichick drafted, he evaluated, he scouted, he built that team. He found Tom Brady. Bill Belichick is just as responsible for the Patriots dynasty as what Tom Brady was. What has happened since Brady has departed from the Patriots and he split up with Bill Belichick still doesn't change how important Bill Belichick was to the Patriots' success. And Bill Belichick against North Carolina, Bill Belichick for North Carolina tonight, he looked like he forgot how to coach. This team looked like they forgot how to play football. Didn't want to tackle, didn't want to block, didn't want to catch. I mean, I don't know what to think about North Carolina moving forward. I thought this team was going to make it to the ACC championship, and although those were lofty and somewhat unrealistic expectations, I was at least thinking the floor would be 6 wins. They could be worse than what FSU was last season. If you don't want the starting quarterback of your favorite team to play like Anthony Richardson, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, check us out, JT Sports, on all podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Let's get back to the video. It's time to bring out those receipts for all of the Carson Beck skeptics out there that scapegoated him for everything that went wrong with Georgia's offense in 2024. How you doing, buddy? Because Carson Beck was out there balling against the Fighting Irish, one of the best defenses in college football. 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. This looked like the Carson Beck that we saw in 2023 when he led Georgia to the SEC championship with only 1 loss as a starter that season. It's amazing how good a guy can look when he has one of the best offensive lines in college football, a great play caller on offense, and actual receivers on the field that know how to freaking catch. Carson Beck is going to be fantastic for Miami this year. Is he going to win the Heisman? Maybe. The way he was going off against Notre Dame, I could see Carson Beck winning the Heisman. Would be one of the best redemption stories in the history of college football. Carson Beck was ostracized, he was criticized, he was made out a villain and pushed out of the University of Georgia. He was the reason why they underperformed last season. He comes to Miami and balls out against a team that was just in the national championship a few months ago. Carson Beck is legit, and nobody should ever doubt any brother from the 904. I told y'all that I believe Carson Beck was going to bounce back. Is he going to be as good as what Cam Ward was last season? Maybe in his own way. It's hard to match what Cam Ward did. He was a finalist for the Heisman. He had the greatest season ever for a Miami Hurricanes quarterback statistically. So there definitely are huge shoes for Carson Beck to fill, but I feel like he's filling them in pretty nicely. And how about Malachi Tony? How was Malachi Tony a 3-star recruit? He easily should have been a 5-star. When I heard that he was a true freshman, I thought he was a 5-star recruit. So I go and I look up Malachi Tony 24/7. Bro, he's a 3-star freaking recruit, and he comes from a powerhouse in South Florida, American heritage. This just goes to show how pointless recruiting rankings truly are, because for the people that work at 24/7, who make these recruiting rankings, and you make your living doing this, you should be fired. There's no way after what we saw Malachi Tony do against Notre Dame that he had any business not being a 5-star recruit. This is going to be one of the best true freshman seasons that we've seen since Jeremiah Smith last year. He could be better than Jeremiah Smith for all we know. He looks like the miniature version of Tyreek Hill. Why was Malachi Tony not a 5-star recruit? I do not know, but he was absolutely dominating out there to the point when Notre Dame had to start doubling him in the second half on 3rd down. And what's even more impressive is he's only 17 years old. It's like, the more we progress throughout college football, the better these players are starting to get at a young age. You're 17 years old, dominating a defense that was just in the national championship. A year ago, you were playing high school football. Miami's offense was fun to watch, but you want to know what was even more fun to watch? Miami having a freaking defense. Thank the Lord that Mario Cristobal hired Corey Heatherman. And although that defense almost sold in the end, if this was last year's defense, they would have gave up 45 points easily. Notre Dame could have run the ball. Their offensive line was getting obliterated by Ruben Bain. You talk about somebody who was laying the pain. Oh my goodness, it seemed like every drop back, Ruben Bain was in the backfield. Catching interceptions too. I'm like, what can this dude do? He might be able to play linebacker in a little bit of corner. This dude is a freak. He's not normal. Miami's defense was superb in this game to me. Outside of a few hiccups that they had late with the big blown coverage that they had, which got Notre Dame back into the game, this is a vastly more improved defense than last year. You got a lot of talent in the secondary, and as we progress throughout the season, the defense should continue to get better. A big question that I kept getting asked was, why was I so confident that Miami was going to take a step up defensively? Because they threw a lot of money on this side of the ball. In the transfer portal, Mario Cristobal got 4 out of the top 20 highest rated DBs available. So it's not as if Miami just went out and got whoever. Like, they got good starters, and they also got guys who are going to be around for a year or two. So for Miami against Notre Dame, I kind of have to reassess my expectations for this team. Although I expected Miami to win this game, it was one of the few games that I got right this weekend. My only concern was Marcus Freeman going to outcoach Mario Cristobal? But to his credit, he handled this game pretty well. I have no complaints about how this game went. Even if Miami would have lost, you know, I would have been like, I kind of expected it. I still wouldn't have been hard on Mario Cristobal. But the issue with Mario Cristobal isn't his ability to win big games. Mario Cristobal went on the road a few years ago at Oregon and beat Ohio State in Columbus. So he can win big games. The issue is he plays down the competition. And how good is Miami going to look when they play up against the teams that they're expected to blow out? I don't know. But I do know for right now, hey, Miami looks like a damn good team. And Carson Beck, it looks like he's going to continue the tradition of transfer quarterbacks coming to South Florida to ball out. College football's biggest fear is coming true. The state of Florida is coming alive. Florida State, they get a huge upset win over Alabama. How good are they going to be this year? Because Alabama, I still think is going to be a really good team. And don't say they beat a terrible Alabama team. This was a Florida State team that went 2-10 last year. For them to go from how they looked last year to beating Alabama, you can't downplay that. Florida State, they should be a top 25 team this year, and maybe we see them right back in the mix competing for the ACC championship. Miami could very well be in that mix. Florida could be in the playoffs competing for the SEC title. For the first time in my life, and I'm 22 years old, I've been watching college football for about 13 years now. I can never remember a time when the big three of Florida was all good, when all three teams were ranked, when it actually felt like all three teams had an opportunity to possibly compete for their conference titles. Florida, the hype is definitely justified with how good DJ Lagway was, with the amount of talent that they have, starters, and the true freshmen that they have going off. Same thing with Miami. FSU, they made some really good portal pickups and a really good coaching staff overhaul. The state of Florida is going to be really competitive. And why college football is really afraid right now at the reemergence of football in the Sunshine State is now if FSU, Miami, and Florida continue this season to play the way that they did in week one, recruits are now going to look more into staying home. Guys like Jeremiah Smith, who come from Miami's backyard and go up north to Ohio State, they end up staying home because now they know that staying in the area, playing for the hometown team, not only gives me the best shot at getting developed to get drafted high in the NFL, but I also can play in big games, meaningful games, and compete for a national championship. Same thing with the guys from the Central Florida area, the Tallahassee area. There is a lot of great talent that leaves this state. And one thing that I want to be able to see before I die is all three of these Florida schools playing their best football, getting in recruiting wars for some of the best players in the state. The Sunshine State being back in college football makes this sport more fun to watch. Imagine if the national championship comes down to one of the big three schools in Florida, which it very much well could. Maybe not for Florida State, but Miami definitely could be up there. They definitely do have the talent to be in that game, and I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Florida in the national championship either. If DJ Lagway ends up being what they think is their second coming to Tim Tebow. The emergence of college football in the Sunshine State is not being talked about after week one. And I don't think Florida State is just lightning in a bottle. Florida State is actually going to be a really good team this year. Their floor is 6 wins. Their ceiling is 10. Possibly they end up winning the ACC championship. They completely changed everything. Miami overhauled their defense. And they got another hit out of the portal at quarterback in Carson Beck. And Florida has done a great job at recruiting, developing, getting guys out of the portal, and also developing those guys as well. There has never been a better time to be excited about college football in the state of Florida than right now this season. Heck, what about USF? They destroyed Boise State, who was the best G5 team in college football last year. They could be on to something. Maybe we see USF be that G5 team that gets that automatic bid for those teams. I think that college football better look out for the reemergence of college football in the Sunshine State. When I watched South Carolina beat Virginia Tech the other day, I kept seeing all of these freaks. Lenore Sellers, the dude's like 6'3", 245 pounds, like Derrick Henry at running back. He can't be tackled. Then you got him throwing to Nick Harbor, who has Olympic-like speed, but he's built like a bodybuilder, but somehow happens to play wide receiver. You have Dylan Stewart, who is terrorizing college football, commanding triple and quadruple teams at only 18 years old. They also had a bunch of huge 215-plus running backs, defensive line, guys looking like they're 300-plus running, 4'6", 4'8". You just have all kinds of freak athletes over there at South Carolina. South Carolina is the freakiest team in college football. They have so much athleticism at every position. They must have one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in America. Because whatever they do as far as their strength and conditioning workouts and their regimen during the offseason, they be having their team looking fit and more athletic than everybody else that they played. And against Virginia Tech, you saw that. Kyron Drones, I know he's awful, but the speed that defensive line had to keep him from taking over this game with his legs, that was a big reason why South Carolina's defense dominated the way that they did. And this secondary was also really good too, especially in the red zone. Now, they did have a few big plays that they gave up, but with the athleticism that South Carolina seems to have, and it's a little bit surprising that they have the amount of freak athletes that they do, considering the fact that they don't recruit on the same level as some of the other big-time programs in this conference, but they do a really good job at player evaluation. They got a pretty decent NIL collective, maybe not deep pockets like Texas, but if there's a guy that they truly believe is worth the money, they have no problem dishing it out, and they're paying Lenore Sellers, Darren Stewart a lot of cash, and they're getting a lot of return on investment with those guys. Lenore Sellers, he's going to win a Heisman this year. For those of you who don't know, if you're not a South Carolina fan, they got a new offensive coordinator, Mike Shula, who was calling plays during the prime of Cam Newton's time in Carolina. He was Cam Newton's offensive coordinator when he dominated the NFL, won MVP, took the Carolina Panthers to the Super Bowl that year. And the offense that South Carolina was running against Virginia Tech, a lot of quarterback power from heavy backfield formations. You're running play action out of these formations as well. South Carolina is running the Cam Newton offense for Lenore Sellers. And it's going to be tough for any other team that's going up against South Carolina to beat this team when Lenore Sellers is playing his best football. This was the best quarterback in the country coming into this season, in my opinion. He was the hottest quarterback during the second half of the 2024 season. 18 touchdowns, only a few turnovers to end the season. He was absolutely smoking. Now, the offensive line still needs to improve. His awareness in the pocket could be a lot better. Sometimes he'll run into sacks. But with the kind of athleticism that he has, he could be what everybody thought Anthony Richardson was going to be. He has gotten better every time you watch him play. There's a major difference between the player that Lenore Sellers is now compared to the quarterback that he was when he took his first start last season against Old Dominion. More comfortable throwing the football, way more accurate. South Carolina is an underrated team to watch in the SEC this year, despite being the 13th ranked team in the nation at the time I'm recording this. South Carolina is still projected by the FPI and most analysts to finish in the bottom half of the conference. This should easily be, at the bare minimum, an 8-win team, and I think that the ceiling is 10-2, and they sneak into the SEC championship with the amount of freak athletes that they have on this team, the amount of size, the way that these guys are able to move with their size also. They're built to be mostly any other team in the SEC, maybe minus Texas. That's about it. Because in the SEC is all about having the top athletes in the sport, and South Carolina has that. Alabama fans need to relax about firing Kalen DeBoer. Please don't scream at me. I understand that losing to Florida State is an embarrassment. It is something that can never happen for a program like Alabama. And there no longer is the fear factor with playing Alabama anymore that there used to be when they had Nick Saban. And Tommy Castellanos was right. They don't have Nick Saban to save them anymore. Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban around to right the ship, to ease some of your concerns. But Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's been. Last season was the best season that the first-year head coach ever had at Alabama. And it also happened to be the worst season that Kalen DeBoer ever had in all his years being a head coach. The issue with Kalen DeBoer isn't his ability to lead Alabama to success. We know he can do that. Why? Because he beat the majority of the best teams on Alabama's schedule last year. The only ranked team that Alabama lost to was Tennessee. That was it. The losses that Kalen DeBoer is suffering, that is making this fan base panic, and why they want to fire him, are the games that Alabama is favored to win by multiple possessions. They were a 2-touchdown favorite against Florida State, and they lost by 2 possessions. They got outclassed and outcoached by Vanderbilt. Those losses were inexcusable. Alabama didn't look ready to play in those games, but they always look ready to play in a big game. So what does that show about Kalen DeBoer? He always has this team ready for the spotlight. He always has this team ready for prime time, but he never has them ready when they go up against the ants that they're supposed to be smashed with a sledgehammer. With Alabama having the success that they've had against the best teams on their schedule, I still have confidence that Kalen DeBoer is the right replacement for Nick Saban. Yeah, he's had a few really nasty losses, not making any excuses for that, but I don't think he's taking a job that he's uncomfortable with. I don't think that Alabama being a different location for him, not really being familiar with the South, has an impact on his coaching. Is Alabama a much different team under Kalen DeBoer than what they were under Nick Saban? Of course, but that's to be expected. Nobody is ever going to be able to have a team as good and well coached as what Nick Saban was, as disciplined as what those Nick Saban Alabama teams were. That's why he's the GOAT. At the end of Nick Saban's tenure, though, as a head coach, Alabama was slipping. And Crimson Tide fans never want to be honest about it. Alabama had a bunch of close calls during Nick Saban's final season. And although this is a really ugly loss to have, there still is 11 games left to be played. Kalen DeBoer was paying my tuition 2 years ago when he led Washington to the national championship. I was getting paid betting on Kalen DeBoer in Washington. So do I still believe in Kalen DeBoer? Absolutely. And I'm not about to just write off Kalen DeBoer because he's had a few bad losses against inferior opponents, because Kalen DeBoer is going to make the adjustments. He is too good of a coach. He has too great of a resume not to work out at Alabama. If Kalen DeBoer ends up being a flop in Tuscaloosa, he would have fooled us all. Because if you look at Kalen DeBoer's resume before he got to Alabama, flawless. He took Washington to the national championship in 2 seasons. Does Alabama have a lot of similar issues this season as what they had last year, despite some staff changes, despite having a bunch of guys return from last season? Absolutely. But a lot of their problems can be fixed. You can fix poor tackling. You can fix, inconsistent offensive line play. It's not as if the offensive line doesn't have the talent. The talent's all there, both sides of the ball. This is one of the best teams in college football in terms of talent. They have the highest blue chip ratio in America. So it's not about the talent. It's just about the coaching and the execution. I still believe in Kalen DeBoer. And Alabama fans are overreacting to just this one loss. Is it fair to be concerned about Alabama right now? Absolutely. We don't really know what Kalen DeBoer is, but I'm still very confident we're going to see the Kalen DeBoer that we saw when the Pac-12 over Dan Lanning beat Steve Sarkisian in the playoffs and led Washington to a remarkable 2-year turnaround. They went from being almost extinct with Jimmy Lake to being in the national championship. So there's something that Kalen DeBoer does that works with how he has just won everywhere. He was dominating NAIA. He kind of was like the Nick Saban of NAIA football. He was winning championships at like some school in Sioux Falls and like Dakota or something like that. And if you're a good coach, your location, where you're coaching at, doesn't really matter. You should be able to adapt. Kalen DeBoer has adapted. He's recruited well. He's made changes. Brighter days are ahead for Alabama football with Kalen DeBoer. There's this post that pisses me off every time it comes up on my timeline on Twitter, and it's that Nick Saban quit because he no longer is the only coach that can pay players. He knew that the playing field was getting level, so he quit while he could still keep his legacy intact. That is such an ignorant statement to make to me. Because Nick Saban has been dominating college football well before he ever stepped foot in Tuscaloosa. Did you not forget that he was winning at LSU? He was winning at Michigan State. Nick Saban didn't need to buy a team to win national championships. Just because you buy the best roster that money can buy doesn't guarantee you success. Prime example, Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. Everybody always loves bringing them up. They spent so much money on their team, and they sucked. Having money and buying players, having the best team talent-wise due to recruiting rankings doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win, because you still need good coaching to bring the best out of those players. Nick Saban didn't have too many misses in his recruiting classes at Alabama. The majority of his recruiting classes will comprise of guys who were getting drafted in the NFL and very early in the draft also. He was an elite football savant. He was elite development of talent. He was an elite game day coach. Nick Saban was one of the very few all-around great head coaches in college football. He wasn't just a guy who's a great play caller, a good strategist, and not a good acquirer of talent like some coaches out there like Dan Mullen. He's a head coach who just knew what it took to win. And he held his team to a really high standard. Tennessee was giving out money in McDonald's bags. Nobody ever talked about it. There have been plenty of teams that got caught paying players under the table. If you think that Nick Saban was the only coach who was paying players under the table, then you're sadly mistaken. There were other programs who were paying players too. Hell, they alleged that Cam Newton got paid to go to Auburn. Reggie Bush apparently got paid. That's why he got his Heisman taken away. USC had all kinds of stuff going on. Miami was paying players. There were plenty of programs that got exposed for paying players and didn't win. Nick Saban won. Sure, you got to have great teams to win. Coaches coach and players make plays, but coaches still got to put those players in position to make those plays. They have to develop them in practice. They have to make a practice routine. They have to make a practice regimen. They have to push them. They have to know how hard they can push them. Just because Nick Saban had money to spend on some players doesn't mean that, oh, he ran away from NIL. He just didn't want to deal with this shit anymore. Most of these coaches don't want to deal with it. Most of these head coaches in college football, if they had the opportunity to coach in the NFL, they would. Because they don't want to deal with everything that goes on with recruiting, with NIL, because sometimes it can be a hassle, especially with no regulations. A bunch of coaches would have felt the same way about NIL as what Nick Saban did on his way out. Nick Saban didn't really fully retire because of NIL. He retired because the game was no more about building a connection between player and coach. It was just all about how much can you pay me. It became transactional relationships, and Nick Saban and his wife, Miss Terry, didn't like that. They liked it actually being able to bond with the players. They liked actually feeling like a family. Alabama has money. Nick Saban is a good evaluator of talent. He got Jahmyr Gibbs out of the transfer portal. He got Jamison Williams out of the transfer portal. So he would have definitely been able to keep up with the NIL era, the transfer portal era. Sure, it would have irritated him having to lose so many guys. Maybe he wouldn't have been as dominant during the NIL era as he was pre-NIL era. But this is the greatest head coach of all time. What made Nick Saban so great was his ability to adapt. When he tried to warn college football about the offense that Chip Kelly was running at Oregon, no huddle, and nobody wanted to change the rules, Nick Saban adapted and he started running that same offense and won national championships with it. He got better quarterbacks. He went from winning natties with A.J. McCarron to winning a national championship with Tua, making it to a national championship with Bryce Young. Every quarterback, every recruiting class that Nick Saban has brought in, he's won them at least a national championship. That's an insane stat. At least most of them. Nick Saban didn't need to cheat or pay guys underneath the table to win. Rather, if he couldn't pay guys or not, Alabama still would have gotten players that wanted to get coached because they wanted to get developed for the next level. They wanted to win with one of the greatest head coaches ever. Just the name of Nick Saban makes guys want to play for him. Not all due to money. Some guys took pay cuts. Some guys could have made more money playing elsewhere, but they chose to take less for Nick Saban.